Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to welcome you to our show today. I'm so excited. We have an award-winning journalist, broadcaster with us, Lisa Osborne, who's amazing. You've probably heard her voice everywhere. Just hang out for a minute while we get things rolling here in just a couple of seconds. And you can listen to the great music.
At work, I was constantly feeling anxious.
But I'm feeling much stronger and clearer about it all.
For me, one of the many aha moments was how to breathe.
So welcome to our show. It is Monday, December 14th, and it's a little bit after 8 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to say hello to everybody. I hope you're doing well. And I know that right now is a challenging time for a lot of people. Some of us are pretty much at our wits' end with all the stay-at-home orders and all the things that are happening around the world with COVID. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today because, as we've been done, the goal of this show is really to help you with the tools that you need to heal yourself so that you're not dependent on medications or things outside you to heal. And healing starts from the inside out. And sometimes when we're not happy or we're out of alignment with what we're doing, it can actually cause more stress in the body, which eventually will lead to symptoms and problems and can lead to bigger health issues. Cancers and things, more serious issues don't just start overnight. It's a long-term process. Just the same thing with, parts of your body that really stop moving. It's not immediate unless you had a fall or an accident. It's over time that these things the muscles start to shrink. We start to lose our mobility, maybe even, and if we don't exercise the mind, we're not learning all the time, getting new information. Similarly, the brain starts to kind of get stuck, right? And that's when we start to show the signs of aging. So the show is really about helping you refine, getting in alignment with your purpose, what you're doing here on the planet, giving you some CPR, literally for your soul, the tools that you need if you're seeking. Some people are pivoting right now because of COVID. We've had some massive changes in employment, and just if we put it in perspective, it's kind of interesting. Like thinking back to the Great Depression in 1929. At that time, the unemployment during the Depression at its height was about 29%. And then after it started to, kick in a little bit, there was some recovery. The unemployment here in the United States was around 14%, which is about where we are right now because of COVID. So a lot of people lost their jobs. They're rethinking what their path has been. And that's one of the things when you are employed by somebody else, or even if you're self-employed, there's certain things that we just don't have control over. But because of this experience, I think a lot of people are looking at what can they do differently. So in any case, we have some different tools here. If you tune into the different shows, we did already something on the 5 pillars of confidence. Lisa's going to talk today about how to get your message out. We also have had Rita, Mama Rita, who came on and talked to us about women and wealth and what to do about that. And we will be having other shows, things on helping you do your scheduling, things on emotional intelligence, things on how your how to reset your nervous system so that you can go back to a state of more peace inside. Because when you are agitated on the inside and you're feeling stressed out and you're feeling anxious, again, this is putting stress on the immune system. And what happens is when we are really stressed out, the rest of the body will take resources from the immune system to keep us operational until it just can't anymore. And then we start to have these, psychological and physiological meltdowns. And for those of you who don't know my story, I was in the film business for a number of years. And because of and I won't get into my whole story here today, but I did put in a 70-hour work week, and I was a woman in a man's world. And because of the stress levels of that and trying to feel like I had to output more and do better and be better, eventually that stress took its toll on my health. And I ended up in bed for 2 years. And so, but the good news about that was it set me, like right now with COVID, it set me on a new path. I reevaluated what I was doing, and it actually got me on the path as a healer. And now, some 30 plus years later, I've healed over 5,000 people, of a variety of things. And, anything is possible. And so I like to tell people that because our bodies have the capability to pretty much recover from anything if we give it the right tools. And a lot of times people don't know what are the right tools. What are the foods I should avoid? They don't even realize that what they're doing as a line of work might actually be causing them physiological symptoms, or why they have an ongoing level of stress or anxiety. And I definitely have different ways to work with you to help you with that. So I want to bring Lisa on here in just a minute, but again, putting this in perspective, this is a good time. If you're looking for resources, you're starting to think about what could you do differently to either bring yourself out more as an entrepreneur or maybe start out on an entrepreneurial path for the first time. I will tell you that I've been an entrepreneur for, I don't even know, 30 something years now. And it's not always easy. Actually, it can be very challenging, but the idea of having control over your time, over your hours, when you can take off, was very appealing to me. I love the idea that if I want to, I could drop everything today and go travel around the world. That is an option for me. So today, also one other thing, I have a really exciting thing to share for those of you who don't know. My new book, woohoo! This is Women in the Modern Business World, a blueprint on how to lead yourself to a better life. This was released this past week. It shot to #1 in about 2 hours. I am one chapter in this. It's a collaboration of 13 women from around the world where we share our stories, our struggles, our lessons. I highly recommend you get the book. It's up on Amazon, and you can get it on Kindle or you can get it in paperback. And, there's a lot of good material here, and it might open you up to some ideas for what to do for if you're looking at choices and what you can do. Because I think what happened for me and happens for a lot of us is we end up on these paths, not necessarily, sometimes consciously choosing something different, but not knowing what all the choices are out there. And one of the things we're going to have Lisa talk about is, her background and how she ended up in such an interesting path. Because honestly, I'm fascinated by the idea of, she does some voiceover too. Excuse me, and we're going to talk about that. Excuse me. So, sorry, a little frog there. So let me read Lisa's bio because I don't have it fully memorized. I'm just going to give you a little piece of that. And then we'll bring her on board and she'll give you some tips. And also pay attention because she does have a free giveaway that she's giving. So you'll be able to write down the link so that you can reach out to her directly. So Lisa and I have been friends for, gosh, I don't even know how long now, at least probably 10 years. She is a Southern California-based broadcaster, audio producer, and radio host. And if you haven't heard her podcast, I just want to totally suggest that you listen to her, tune into what she has to offer. She's fun. She's smart. Her voice has been heard anchoring news on some of the largest news talk radio stations in Los Angeles. She's also been a music host on National Radio Network. She's held a lot of different positions during her career in broadcasting, including program director, morning host, news anchor, reporter, producer, and news and public affairs director. And as soon as you, and in addition to being on air, Lisa has an audio production company that creates marketing for on-hold messages, audio narrations for businesses and municipalities. She also coaches people on how to do their own podcast. So as soon as you hear her voice, you'll recognize that it's the sound of a trained voice. It's so distinct. And one of the things I love about her also, one of the things that she does is every year she is the voice of the boat parade in Marina del Rey. If she sounds familiar to you, it might be because you've heard her at the boat parade. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Lisa on board, and here she is. Let's see. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Thanks for mentioning the boat parade. We just did it virtually on Saturday night, so that's so awesome. Yeah, I have a longtime co-host, so we love that parade.
And people can watch the rebroadcast of that, right, online, or do you know? Or?
Now at mdrboatparade.org.
Uh-huh.
And I'm working on my website that we're going to give out today. And so I'm going to add some links. There's a little bit about the boat parade there, but it's just really fun because my friend and I are in Burton Chase Park, which is right on the waterfront in Marina del Rey, just north of LAX, not, right there. And typically every year we're in the park with a large audience who comes year after year, brings the kids. We have kids who sing Christmas carols. They come up, in between the boats. And this year they produced a best of. So my co-host Mickey and I got to actually narrate the best of. And we actually got to see more of the parade than we see from being in the park because we had a close-up view on this video. So mdrboatparade.org. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, no, great. I actually, I usually try to go to at least one or two of the boat parades every year. So, for me, this was I didn't know that they had it. And I'm going to go back and watch the replay. But we usually will take a picnic with us and go out and watch the boats. And it's one of our favorite things. And I remember one year we had a gondola we took out in Redondo Beach. And we were in the gondola while the parade was going on. So we had a really, up close and personal look at what was happening, which was really, really fun. Just a little cold.
But you're brave being in a little boat when all those big boats are around you.
Yeah. Yeah, really. It's like, anyway, it makes me think of kayaking up in Washington and around the islands up there. And I just remember we were in these little kayaks and we hear this heavy breathing and we look and there's like killer whales, in the water right near us. And we're like, don't move your tail. So, because, who knows, right? We'll end up flipped in the water with them. But, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, just talk about feeling insignificant when there are bigger things in the water than you.
Yeah, puts the world into perspective for you there.
It definitely does. So anyway, I appreciate you coming on, Lisa. You're such a light and a fun person to be around. And we have a lot of different ways that you and I, kind of hang out together. And it's an honor to have you on the show. A real privilege. You're a fantastic person and you're extremely talented. And I think you have some really great things to offer to other people. So let's talk just a little bit about career choice because, to me, it's always interesting. Like, what made you decide? Like, how was it a conscious decision that you ended up in radio and voiceover and narration, or was it something that you kind of fell into? If you could just tell us a little bit about your background and how that happened, that'd be great.
Well, it's a little bit of both because the timing was great. So I was, it was like in the late 80s, I was playing in bands and I had a business. I've always been an entrepreneur. My sister and I, since we were little, we were having our own little businesses. And out of high school, I started my own business. It was really Southern California based. And I was looking at moving to Arizona because I was going to get married and wanted a different career in Arizona because I didn't want to start up what I was doing in Southern California there. So I had didn't really want to play in bands or I'd like be a nightclub singer or anything. So I had heard that Fullerton College in Orange County, California had a good radio program. So on my way home from work one day, I swung by and it was literally a week before the quarter started. And I signed up for like to go 4 days. And because I was an entrepreneur, I had the flexibility to be able to work my schedule around attending these radio classes. And by my second semester at that class at school, I got on the school radio station. And then soon after that, I had a couple of radio jobs, because then the program at Fullerton College, this is the junior college, not the university, was known for training training in such a way for commercial radio. So the radio stations would call the school to get starter people. So I had a couple of jobs my second semester. At the first radio station I was at, I was like running the board of these big 1 hour long reel to reels on this financial radio network. And I told the boss I was interested in news. So he put me in the news department a couple of times a week. And I learned, again, because I had my own business, I was able to work 2 days a week at the radio station and do my other business, which was most of my income then, around that. And it just kind of turned into anchoring at a big station in LA, and just some really fun stuff. But when I started doing broadcast, this owner of a construction company said, "Oh, well, if you're doing, if you're on the radio, you could be the voice on hold at this plumbing supply company." And I'm like, "Voice on hold? I don't even know." I called up and I heard the message. You've all heard this. You've heard the message, the marketing message or the greetings on hold in between music, and while you're waiting to talk to the person on the phone. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So I actually got that company as my first client. And then I just kind of went out and found other businesses who wanted that, joined the Chamber of Commerce and networking groups at the time, which was so fun for me because I came out of a totally different background. I wasn't in the business world before, as far as working with people, with business people in that way. So I just started that, and I've always done the on-hold messages and the on-air. So it's given me the base, of having my own clients and my own some income without actually being hired at a radio station. So I was able to work in different roles at different radio stations because of that other income. So, yeah.
Cool. Did you have to have any kind of I don't know, SAG or AFTRA certification or anything like that to do that? Or it just was, just your qualifications that you had? Did you need a special anything like a card or something?
Well, when I got hired at this radio stations in LA, then you needed to join SAG-AFTRA.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, SAG and AFTRA merged. It used to be AFTRA, the radio hosts, the AFTRA. So, yeah, so it mostly, the SAG-AFTRA wants you to work only union jobs. They're so if you're on like a big, at a radio station, if it's union, you want to be union. If you're at a radio station that's not union and you still have to make money, then you have to do what you have to do. But you really want to support, doing it as a union.
So have you ever considered, I mean, this is kind of a little bit of a detour, but I always my mind goes a little, in all kinds of directions with these things. Have you ever done voiceover for any cartoons or anything like that? Or is that,
That's funny that you mentioned that, because I'm in IMDb. I have one listing in that Internet Movie Data, IMDb, right? Internet Movie Database or whatever it is. And it's for, I was the voice of an anime. So it was an anime cartoon that they were translating into English. So I was the voice, but I was like the school teacher and I think the narrator, because I'm not an actor, right? So I don't really if people want to get into voice acting, voiceovers, I suggest taking like an improv class or acting classes, because you're a voice actor. I'm kind of more that announcer voice. So I did get a little mention in that anime cartoon that I did. My co-host in the Marina Boat Parade, she's done more cartoon stuff because she's got that voice to do different voices.
Oh, that's so fun. That would be fun stuff. So great. So let's talk a little bit about, I always like to, because my audience is mostly women out there. And as a woman out there in the world of broadcasting, have you felt that, do you feel that there's some differences in terms of how women are treated in your world, as opposed to men? Is there any kind of a differential there that's an obvious? Has it made you work harder or differently or impacted you in any way?
I never really think of that when I go into work. However, and when you're working union, it's one pay rate for everyone, right? So
Okay.
There's more fairness there. I can't say for sure that other places that I've worked, possibly, it wasn't that way. But as far as, like never feeling like I can't do anything because I'm a woman. I don't really feel like that.
So that's great. So for those of you who are considering a change in your career, this, just pay attention to that this is, it's kind of a gender neutral thing, broadcasting in terms of voiceover and narration, which is great. And so, okay, so let's talk about what you've learned from working in broadcasting.
Yeah. Oh, well, gosh. I've learned that, I guess, like for what we're talking about today, getting your message out to the world. What I really learned anchoring news, when you're on the air with a fresh newscast every half hour or less than a half hour. By the time you've done the top of the hour news, it's 5:06, say, and then you're on again at 5:30, right? So the great thing about broadcasts like that, when you have such short deadlines, is you don't have a lot of time to think about making it perfect and polishing it, and oh, it's just almost ready. It's not quite ready yet, right? You're going on the air whether you have half of the newscast in your head or the script doesn't come up, or you just got to be ready for those short deadlines. So I think that what's the question? What I've learned is I've learned deadlines for broadcast.
Well, it also sounds like, in a way, it gets you out of your head, like out of that, because a lot of the biggest disease that I see in entrepreneurs across the board is, procrastination, right? And this is not just entrepreneurs, it's human beings, right? And here is a situation where you can't sit there and think about it, right? You've got to just move forward and trust. So there's a certain amount of faith that goes with that as well, right? Faith that whatever is going to come out is somehow going to work out.
The news is going to be there. Faith that, you're going to get it right. The good thing about broadcast is you're reading it. So it's the whole thing with the puncture and the punctuation and grammar and stuff, right? You don't worry about that as much because you're writing for spoken word. But so if you're writing stuff, like now that I'm in a position where we're doing COVID news updates, so we're doing it for print. So you have to pay more attention to that. But with broadcast, you don't have to worry about that. But you do have to write the script. So, and you have to get it out there, right? And that's the thing. Sometimes I find that if I have too much time on my hands, then it's harder to get stuff done. If I only have a little bit of time each day, or if I devoted a little, a certain shorter amount of time each day to doing something, then I find that it's easier to get done than if I've got all day to do it,
So on that note, let's talk about, because you were talking a little bit about preparation and writing things out, and then also sort of having to work off the cuff. So for people who are listening here, we talked about the main focus today being about getting your message out to the world. How do you get a bigger platform? You have a number of different ways that you work. You have your podcast, you're doing, the broadcast. Why don't you share, if you don't mind, with people, what do you think are the pluses and minuses of the different platforms? And how would you suggest somebody who wants to move forward and get a bigger audience, what are some of the first steps that you would suggest?
So I would suggest really seeing what you're most comfortable doing, because you don't need to do all the platforms, but you want to be consistent on the platform, the one or two platforms that you choose. So for instance, like if you're doing a podcast, then, and the other thing is that you mentioned off the cuff, and it's just because you're on deadline constantly and you're going with what you have, it doesn't mean that it's off the cuff. A lot of preparation goes into it. Like you do have to get there early. It's not like you just show up and, I'm going to talk about whatever comes up at the bottom of the hour. But I would suggest, figuring out what it is you want to do and what way your message is best. So for instance, like I know that Instagram is a really hot platform right now. So if that'll work for you, if you've got good visuals, if you're able to take photos with your phone and do, the visual aspect. If you're looking for something that's a little more, like if you're trying to be, promote your business to business, then you might want to consider learning more about LinkedIn, and, Facebook, everyone's on, but I'm thinking LinkedIn for business to business, and Facebook could still be good as well for, it's just nice to have an outpost on Facebook, because everyone seems, most people seem to be there. And so, for instance, if you wanted to do a podcast, if you are an expert in some way, or you have tips to share for doing something better, then I think a podcast is good. I can go in a little deeper if you're planning a podcast, if you wanted to. For instance,
I think that would be great, because I'm going to assume that most of these people know about Facebook, LinkedIn, those kind of things. So maybe they've got a couple of little things going there. Maybe they're not going full force, but they definitely feel called to do some kind of broadcasting something. So let's talk about that. Why did you start, for example, why did you start with podcasts? I mean, what made you go into that?
Because that podcasting for me was natural, because I did radio. So when podcasts first came around out of, and they're called podcasts because people started listening to podcasts when iPods first came, right? The very first iPod. So because it was a tool that I had, I already had the skills for the production, the sound editing. I had produced talk radio shows before. So I had that skill set. When I first started doing podcasts, it gave me an opportunity, because I was doing like mainstream news or mainstream, I was on commercial radio. So it wasn't as much health and wellness and well-being and spirituality and all of that. So that's my passion, is the wellness and well-being and spirituality stuff. So doing a podcast on those topics allowed me to, express that part of myself, and still, holding down my regular day radio jobs.
Mm-hmm. So when you first, let's see, for people who have no clue, like how to start a podcast, what would be the first step that you would suggest to them?
Well, I would figure out, what do you want to do with your podcast? Because what are people tuning into your podcast for? So the difference between a broadcast, which is if you're doing a radio show on a radio station that's regional, like say it's over across Southern California or Los Angeles or wherever, then that's you're reaching a broad audience. But with podcasts, you want to consider more of a niche audience. You don't want to be so niche that you run out of topics or that it's too narrow. But in podcasting, if you can develop a good size audience based on more of a niche subject, then you can have the potential to get advertisers, because the advertisers want to reach this dedicated, loyal following of whoever they are. So consider what you have to share, what your format is going to be. Like, are you going to have guests? Are you going to be the expert yourself? How are you going to present the information? I suggest not always feeling like you need to rely on guests every week, because as you continue to do your podcasts and develop your audience is tuning in to you because they care what you think, and they hear your personality. So like a lot of times we feel like we have a guest because, I can't carry the hour or the half hour. You could always, the beauty with podcasting is you can make it any length you want, right? So it can be shorter. So I would recommend doing shorter episodes more frequently than, like, say, a 30-minute or a 1-hour episode like every month. Why not do 15 minutes a week or 15 minutes every couple of weeks? Kind of figure out what's comfortable for you, because we get really ambitious and want to do this, and then as you go on and on, it can take quite a bit of time into your week. You're considering, what's my topic going to be? If I have a guest, I need to get my talking points. I need to record it. I need to edit it, and then put your beginning music and your intro on it and the outro on it, and then get it onto your podcast platform. So I would suggest, I like to tell people to have like 4 or 5 episodes in the can, like produced, before you actually get on Libsyn or whatever podcast host you use. We can talk about podcast hosts in a few minutes, but I like having those few shows produced. And even if you're not ready to start your own podcast, but if you think it seems interesting at all, just start recording yourself talking, right? And you're going to listen back and you're going to go, oh no. And then you're going to get better, because, and imagine you're talking to one person, you're not talking to, hey, everybody, it's very intimate, is the audio realm is intimate. You're talking to people who are out on their daily walk or their run or in the car, right? It's a very, like, radio is a very individual thing. So feel like you're talking to one person. Imagine who your ideal audience is. Like, who is it? Is it a mom who's doesn't have a lot of extra time? She has kids. She works and then has to get them to like, who is this? Who is your audience? So consider that. Consider topics. I always like to say, like, serve your listeners each week a slice of the pie, not the whole pie all at once, because that's going to give you time to, it's going to give the opportunity. It's going to give you several episodes to serve different topics at a time. And then your listeners, a lot of times if you're listening to audio, you might be multitasking too. So you don't have to give a bunch of dense information all in one episode. So kind of spread it out, let your listeners see your personality.
Mm-hmm. Great. So these are good tips. I think, if we just go back over what we've talked about so far. So, for people who want a more formal, education on broadcasting, you can go to, your local public college or university, or you can take night school to get started. You can start with a podcast, like you said, maybe 15 minutes, just speaking into recording yourself. These are great, great tips. And over time, you'll start to improve. And I think it's kind of interesting because these are, definitely some of the things I wrestled with starting this television show. The platform of that I work with, their format is 1 hour shows, so even though I really wanted to start with a half hour, so it's like, okay, it's 1 hour every other week. This is the way we do it, and just kind of, and going through the different things like you were talking about. Do you want to be a solo act? Do you want to talk do you want to have guests on every week? This all, these are all different things to think about, and really refining, like, who's your audience, and that was the biggest thing for me. I know who my group is here that we're talking to. These are female professionals or people that may be in corporate jobs who are thinking about being entrepreneurs, or actually a lot of the people that tune in right now are already entrepreneurs, but they're looking for ways to get better at what they do, So for those of you who are just tuning in, we've got Lisa Osborne here with us, and you can reach Lisa. We're going to talk some more, but you can reach Lisa you want to learn more about her, you can go to her website at Lisa. You can also email Lisa at lisafm.com. She's going to give you some news release tips later on how to pitch yourself to other networks and things like that. So you might want to write down this email that's going across the bottom of the screen. But we're really honored Lisa has. Lisa, tell us a little bit about, you got just a side thing here. You got an award for broadcasting. Can you tell us about the award that you received?
Oh gosh, the Golden Mike Award. Oh, I have it right here. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, please.
This is kind of funny. Okay, this is me.
Oh, that's so cute.
I know my colleagues in Los Angeles have multiple of them, but I'm happy I won because I've only entered like twice, and I won the first time. So
that's fantastic.
Thank you. So this is for a story that I did. It was entertainment reporting, but it was really about the business of Walt Disney. So it was more of a profile of Burbank that my radio station was doing. We would go into different cities and profile interesting things. So I got to talk to the guy who's in charge of the archives for Disney. So, his job is to watch every single Disney episode and movie or anything they put out and decide what they want to keep, and then what they want to get rid of. And then we went through a whole history. And the cool thing about the internet is we found all this old sound from, early Mickey Mouse and all of that. So it's about an 11-minute story that I put together that goes through this whole history of Disney. So it's pretty cool. I do have that on my website, and I do on that website is in the process of being cleaned up a little bit. And my email, by the way, there's no .com on my email. It's Lisa.
Oh, it's not. It's just Lisa. Okay, so yeah. Let's see what I might have it right here.
It's right there.
Oh, yeah. It's right on there. Lisa. Yeah, I just Lisa.fm. So I just got a little creative there. So cool. Well, thank you for sharing your award. It's a nice looking one. Yeah.
I work with students now, and we nominated some of our students, so I'm hoping our students are going to be getting some of these too when the awards come up in a couple of months.
Okay, so that as an interesting topic. So you take people right now, you have people that are normal citizens off the street, whatever, and bring them into a place where they start to learn how to do broadcasting. So you want to talk a little bit about that and share that with people, how that works?
Yeah, this is a really a place where I work right now, and that is it's a community radio station. So I spent most of my career in broadcast in I'm hearing no feedback. Commercial broadcast, which was different than community radio. So the station that I'm at now is powered by volunteers. I'm one of just a few staff where we actually train either students, because it's at a university, we train students, but also community members. So one to do news, because I'm in the news department. So we train anyone who wants to learn how to be a news reporter, how to do that. So the students will learn kind of how to, write your interview questions, how to edit your audio, how to put together like an interview based on, what's in the news, and then get it on the air. So they're learning deadlines, right? They have a 5 o'clock newscast, and now with COVID, we're producing in advance. We don't have many people going into the radio station right now, but we learned, and that's what is kind of exciting in this year, that who would have thought that we could be actually doing broadcasts and producing newscasts, and from anywhere we are. So some are in the geographic location that the radio station airs, some are not. But there's a way to do training we're using Zoom and doing workshops, and we're able to do hands-on training without, virtually. So Zoom has been a good platform if you can share your screen to do audio production training, and all the different aspects of that. So it's not as hard as you think, producing audio, because you've got your phone, if nothing else, or else there are little small digital recorders you can get for like $100, and you could use that if you're doing in-person interviews. So there's a lot of technology right at our fingertips for creating news, for creating your stories.
So do you have any tips, speaking of technology, because I know that I'm always looking for things that are for Dumb and Dumber. I don't want to have to sit there and spend 20 years learning how to use, this editor to do some editing stuff. We're primarily talking audio here, but what are some of your favorite programs for utilizing to do your editing?
Well, we use a free sound editing program because it's available to everyone, right? And it's called Audacity. AUCITY. If you just Google download Audacity, and it's a multi-track sound editing program. It's pretty easy to edit in single track. So if you were going to do an interview, or see on Zoom, when you record your call on Zoom, when the call ends, you get an audio only version and you get the video version when you've recorded. So we take the audio only file, put it into Audacity. You might need to get an extra encoder. Otherwise, try to get the newest version of Audacity, and you might not need to put on this extra MPEG encoder. And then your sound goes right into Audacity, so you can edit it there, and then export it as an MP3, because you want to use an MP3 file. It's a smaller sized file when you're going to put it up on your podcast. Great
Tips. So where do you recommend people, how do I say this? Okay, well, I guess the best thing is, what would you and I have talked about this privately, but what would you suggest to people in terms of best places to host their podcast?
I like Libsyn. That's what I've used. So, and that's one of the earlier programs. It's like, I pay the $15 a month, but if you wanted to get really into the analytics and see who and where, and get a really drill down on who's listening and all of that, there's a program that's a little bit more a month. SoundCloud is a place where you can still post some audio for free. So if you wanted to get started, like you're not sure you want to commit to a weekly podcast is a lot. So even say every other week, if you're not sure you want to commit to that ongoing ongoing obligation, then get a free SoundCloud account, and you can post a few of your first episodes there. And SoundCloud also has a really nice player that you can embed into your website. So if you just want to do a couple of episodes, or maybe you just want to have an audio introduction on your homepage of your website, you can put it on SoundCloud and then embed it into your website. So that's
Great.
there was something else I was going to tell you too, and I'm trying to think of what it was. Oh, the time. So the time that it takes to do your podcast is like, say you do an interview and it's 20 minutes long. So this is a really good tip. Pre-planning what you're going to do on your interview before you get the person on the phone if you're doing interviews, because you want to plan out your episode, think through it in advance, because the more you think through it in advance, you're going to save a lot more time in editing. So if you just get someone on the phone and you're not really ready with your interview questions and you're winging it, then you'll probably have the person on the phone longer than you would if you had your questions already set, and then you're editing it, and then you're spending more time editing. So say you do a 10-minute interview with someone, that could realistically take you, 30 more minutes or 40 minutes to turn it into a final product. So, it's not just doing a 10-minute interview. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could cut the beginning and the end and then it's going up, but typically you'd want to, listen back, edit it a little bit for air. So really be organized and know what you want. And that, having your questions ready in advance doesn't mean you don't listen, because listening is one of the biggest skills that you can have, is to be a good interviewer. But at least you have a roadmap of where you want to go. You know what you're doing with the person who you're interviewing. And if the person brings up something, you can ask your questions out of order, or you can go deeper into that. But you do want to have an understanding, be clear of what you want to talk to that person about. And I recommend not giving them the exact questions in advance, but you can give them talking points in advance, because any person that you're talking to, they want to know that they can answer your questions and that they're going to look smart. So give them talking points. So we've, had people that if we give them the question, then they're writing it out, and it's not so great, to be having someone reading their answers when you're talking.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And having been interviewed on, a number of different platforms, as the person being interviewed, I want to have the space to be able to riff a little bit and, whatever comes to mind that might be pertinent now. Maybe if it's too planned out, it doesn't come off like a real conversation, and it should be conversational. So you've given us some great tips for, starting your own podcast, really, some concrete things people can use. But what about somebody who, let's go to the person who, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to do it. I want to be the guest on somebody else's show. You have a lot of expertise in terms of how to pitch yourself to a network or whatever. So, I know we have a tip sheet that you're going to be giving away, offering free to the people who are listening in today. But could you give us some talking points about that? What are some of the best ways who should people be approaching? How should they maybe look for people to interview them, and how would they approach them?
Okay, let me answer that about podcasting, and then we'll go into the regular in general, because the podcasting community, there's a great really strong podcasting community out there. Podcast Movement is an org that puts on conferences for podcasters, and it's incredible. Actually, the number of people going to the Podcast Movement has eclipsed the people going to the radio show for broadcaster, because it's so big. So there's a huge, chances are there are other people like you, that are doing a kind of podcast similar to you. For instance, I was producing, helping my sister's true crime podcast get up and going. So she wound up networking with other people who are doing true crime podcasts, and she's been guests on their shows, and has, some of them have been guests on her show. So you can kind of trade off. So feel like approach it as a community effort when it comes to expanding and getting on other people's shows. So if you make friends in your podcast community, you could, trade off being guests on other people's shows. Or if you want to be a guest on someone's show without doing your own podcast, you can still support the podcast community by, commenting on their posts, or liking them, or retweeting, or, kind of helping them expand their platform. So if you wanted to, pitch, if you wanted to become a guest on a show, it's not so much about like, hey, I started this business. Like, don't you want to interview me? Like, you need to give work with, you know, send you to our advertising department, right? Because that's what you buy an ad when you want to promote your business. But if you can be clever about kind of helping, because even in media right now, newsrooms have downsized, right? So if you had an interesting story angle that would work in either you as the expert or you know, using your products or services, or, oh, wow, this is a unique way that, you know, that my products are being used, then you could share that with the media through a news release or a press release, they're called. So it's kind of like a simple document. It's like who, what, where, why, when, like what is the news here? So you write up a simple 1-page, maybe 2-page at the most document in a specifically formatted way, because the media wants to get this information in a way that's understandable. It's the standard. You can Google that. And I do have a sheet if anyone wants to take a look at that. So it's kind of the who, what, where, why, when. You would write, for instance, like say it's an event, like such and such is where it's so like if a person's being honored at an event, you would say, you know, our senator, you know, the such and such org is honoring, you know, Senator so and so at this annual awards, blah blah. And then the next page. So you kind of try to get the who, what, where, why, when is in your first paragraph if you can. Then you go on to more. The next paragraph would be a little more information, maybe a quote or two from the people. And then at the end, you would kind of talk about what the org is about. So like this, you know, like I'm celebrating, my business is, you know, giving out these awards for this. I'm just using awards because that's what's coming to mind first. And then, you would write it up in a page. And at the very bottom of your news release, you would have about this org. So here's the about your org. So you don't have to put all about your company in the body of the news release, but then at the bottom, it'll say about Women's Health Revolution. So Women's Health Revolution is a television show, blah, 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 helping women and people to live their best lives, you know? So, and then you put the contact name on the top. There's a whole format for this, excuse me. And then send it out, figure out where you're going to send it. So rather than blanketing it to the entire world, the key in getting your news out is you showing an interest in other people. So you would want to maybe send this to a reporter in your community who's doing similar stories. Like we have there's a news program now in our community where they're doing good news stories. So if you're helping people in the community, you might want to send it to that reporter that does good news stories. In your local community, like there's probably news sites, you know, your local newspaper publications that are running news releases now because they have the room. So if your news release is well written, they'll just take part of your news release and put it in their publication. So when you're writing it, you want to write the who, what, where, why, when in the top. And remember in the old days of newspaper writing, they would put the most important information at the top, because then if there was only so much space in the paper, when they actually laid out the physical paper, they'd cut the bottom off. So that's what you do with your news release. Yeah. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, no, it was. And it actually reminded me, I mean, I used to write for the newspaper, going all the way back to high school before I even got into public relations. And that was exactly how they taught us, you know, the who, what, when, where, why, all was in that first paragraph. And then, you know, you would go into detail. And at the bottom, by the way, don't forget to put your contact information so they know how to reach back to you if they want to have you on. And, you know, there are also some really good resources. Unfortunately, I didn't think about putting those together, but I know there's a guy named Steve Olsher who has a podcast list. He used to have, I think you can go to his website maybe and find it, where you could get a list of, for example, if you want to just focus on podcasts. But for TV shows, like Lisa was saying, you know, you want to look for, it's like if you have a problem, for example, that needs to be solved, you're going to look for the reporter who deals with problems. You know what I mean? Who's the person who goes to bat for you and fights for people, consumers who've been wronged, right? You're going to find that person at the network and send your stuff to that person. So you do want to think about what kind of reporting those people do that you're reaching out to. Try to get to know them a little bit and what would be of interest to their specific viewers, because it's not just like throwing spaghetti up against the wall to see what sticks, it's definitely like it needs to be this right kind of spaghetti for the right kind of show, that you're talking to. And they are looking for, for example, now people are looking for stories around, related to COVID, for example. That's a hot, unfortunately, it's a hot item because of what's going on around the world, right? Or how it's impacting the personal stories of how this is impacting people. So you're looking for stories that, people who would want to maybe do a human interest if you have something related to that you want to talk about. So these are all, really, really good tips. Now, I forgot to ask, I assume.
Sorry to interrupt. Let me add a couple of other things.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, you want to not be doing this every week, and you want to also be open to, like, perhaps they're not going to run your story that you're pitching them, but they'll see that, oh, you're an expert, like, right? You're a therapist in, for COVID, they might be doing a story on how to support, young people, through COVID. So just getting your name out there as an expert is helpful, even though they might not take your story as you pitch it. But also you're able to take these news releases and put them on your website in the news section of your website. And then search engines are going to be picking up phrases, keywords and phrases based on these news releases. And then that's going to help you to come up higher in web searches as well. So if anyone in your community is looking for a person with your expertise, then that would come up too. So
that's a great tip. I mean, right there. Hello. I hope you guys are writing this stuff down. That's $1 million tip right there, because, that's really so much of the world is on the internet now, and this is where people go. And it's so funny. I mean, things I would have never thought to look up on YouTube or whatever. It's all there. It's like, how do you do this? Okay. Or what do I do about this problem? I don't know how to solve this problem with my computer. And then you go on YouTube and somebody's posted a story on it. Somebody's posted a tip. I mean, I learned just random stuff, right? But I was like, I forget what I was doing. It was something. And I found this random thing about what's the easiest way to get the fruit out of a mango, right? Because, mangoes, they have the big pit in the middle, and I would normally just instinctively, right, cut them on either side of the pit and do it that way. Well, this was a whole thing where you literally scoop the flesh out with a glass, and it was so interesting, and it was so easy, and you think, wow, how come I didn't know how to do this? Or there was a guy who did a whole post on how do you get pomegranate seeds out? What's the easiest way to get?
I didn't mention that. Google that one, because I was impressed by that, because I'm doing pomegranates now, and I never thought they wound up with looks like a flower at the end. The one I saw, they cut it, and I would look up they're in season now.
So but these things, these are priceless, and I think the idea of search engines are getting yourself seen. There's all these scams, by the way, out there to raise your SEO. I get spammed every day, practically, or every other day, from some web developer from somewhere in the universe who somehow managed to find their way to my site and wants to raise my rankings. And they want to charge you, a fair amount of money. And what Lisa's suggesting here is a really simple, smart way to raise your rankings, just by doing what she said. If you could put those news releases on your website, or the other thing is you can take pieces of some of the transcript of your podcast and put that on your website. Now, and again, to raise you up in the search engines. I haven't personally done that because I'm in the process of redoing some of the things of my website. Mm-hmm. But that's the intention of where I'm going to be going. So, okay, so let's think about why let's talk about somebody who doesn't have an audience at all yet, right? Or they have a very few small audience. What would be some of the suggestions that you have to help them? And then this will probably be about our last question or or we're getting near the top of the hour here. But what would be some things that you would suggest for people who need to get an audience or grow an audience? Do you have any ideas to help them?
Well, I just saw my sister do this with her true crime podcast, and I have to say I was so impressed with her because she was in a management position, retired, and went into this this podcast, and she's learning SEO on her own, which is something that honestly for me SEO, it's a little really into the content and the creative, but start where you are, like get your Twitter or your page. I'm just kind of partial to Twitter, but you can find people who are like you and start following them, and then kind of talking to them. So I really feel like it's really about community. So it's about commenting on other people's posts, not just putting your stuff out there and not getting any engagement, because when you get engagements on your posts, then more people will see them. So just start anywhere, right? If you're starting small, just start where you're at, and tweet it out, or share it on your different platforms. Ask your friends, call on your friends, like, hey, I'm starting this new thing. Could you, check out my post or like my post? Or if you're starting a Facebook page, you can invite your Facebook friends to like that page. So I think it's just doing it little baby steps at a time. But I have seen, because like my sister was super dedicated to hers, and she's got up to, I don't know, like maybe 500 followers or subscribers pretty quickly through really reaching out and talking to different people in the community, following people, commenting on posts, and just coming from a way of being helpful to people. I think it is a good way to do it. And it's really more about, like they say here with COVID, like in our town, you may have heard it. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? I mean, it's not going away soon. And just like that with your social media stuff. So really just do what you can a little bit, and then but sustain it, rather than, because so many people, the numbers are high. More than 50% of people who start podcasts, I think they're done in like 6 months. So
wow.
Yeah. So you really want to, commit to something that you could continue. And I think it's about engagement. And this is something that I don't do that I really want to do, is start getting email addresses, like, put up the pop-up on your website, like sign up to get my tips about this or something, where you can start an email list, because then that's your following. And then you can send them, I wouldn't spam them, maybe send them something once a month or even once a quarter, just to kind of check in. And that's just another way to grow your audience. So
that's a great tip. And I think what you started to say there, and you kind of interrupted yourself, but how can you be of service? That's really a part of it, and if you can help other people connect with people that they need to connect with. I have a very a good friend of mine who, I think one of her most awesome gifts, and it's just she's so good at it, but just connecting people up with other people who might be able to help each other, and the term I think these days that's popular is the $1 billion Rolodex, right? So, but how can you serve other people, and commenting and engaging and showing them? I mean, I know that I personally really appreciate those people who take the time to write to me or reach out and let me know what's going on. So thank you so much, Lisa. Is there anything else, because we are at the top of the hour here, are there any last minute? I put your website up again for those of you who would like to, who haven't had a chance to write it down. I do want to also say to people, please do check out, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Women's Health Revolution TV.com. You can go there and watch the replays, make notes if you want to, and also on E360 TV, just download the app and you can find all the episodes there under the category called Fresh Takes. So Lisa, do you have any last minute words you want to just to close it out for yourself? Anything you want to say?
You can just find my email address on the website if you wanted to get the free tips for writing the news release. Lisa@lisa.fm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd love to hear from you, and thanks for having me on. And I appreciate all you're doing to support to support all of your viewers during this time, because that's what we need, is to be in this together and support each other.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It was great having you on the show. And yeah, that's what we're all about. So if you like the show, please spread the word. Do comment, because you do have, during these shows, you can actually interact and let us know if you have questions or comments, and we'll be happy to address those during the show. And with that, we're going to close out. I just want to encourage you all to vibe up. The show is about helping you, and we're here to serve you. So if there's anything you'd like to see on the show, please let me know as well. Other than that, let's be safe out there, and come back, soon. Come back and see us in 2 weeks, because we do the show every 2 weeks at 8 o'clock in the morning. So California time. All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a good day.
At work, I was constantly feeling anxious.
But I'm feeling much stronger and clearer about it all.
For me, one of the many aha moments was how to breathe.